The train whistle woke my two children as it pulled into the station. They were only 3 and 18 months old, and they hadn't seen Papa since he came here to settle this place 6 months ago. The ride on the spring wagon was long and monotonous, over burnt grass through a country where trees were scarce as hen's teeth. As we came over the hill, I saw them, and they were just as magnificent as my husband had written in his letters to me.
There they were, twin cottonwood trees, standing tall. The only objects to be seen on these broad acres, other than buffalo and antelope that roamed at will. Sarah's husband, Robert Miller, had seen these landmarks on the south bank of Lincoln Creek when traveling here with his business partner Nathan Thorpe in April 1871. In the relentless Nebraska winds, their branches called out to them. They spoke of security and invited them to look no further. It's always fascinated me with the vastness of buffalo grass and flat prairie that the location for Aurora was even chosen. Why didn't they stay further south where settlement was already established, and why did they come straight on through? And why did the twin cottonwood trees become such sacred symbols? Could there be more to the story? Our story begins after the last cannon was fired, ending the Civil War. It was then that many decided to take advantage of what the westward expansion was offering: opportunity. That opportunity started 265 miles due east, when 7 Sheraton, Iowa men overheard railroad surveyors talking about the projected route of the new Burlington and Missouri Railroad. Armed with this information, and having seen firsthand what opportunities the railroad access gives to new towns, the men of the land company devised a plan to get ahead of the railroad. David Stone, one of the team members, left Iowa in mid-March of 1871 with the task to scout out the territory to the west. Early maps showed a state road linked Sheraton, Iowa, with what would become Aurora, Nebraska. The road still exists, only now we know it as Highway 34. That said, in traveling that state road, it would have made it all the more probable that they would see the twin cottonwood trees. Stone arrived at the S.W. Spafford place on Lincoln Creek, looked the site over, and returned to Sheraton giving everything a thumbs up. While the original team of 7 fell apart, the idea of greater opportunity was strong enough that Nathan Thorpe and Robert Miller set out to fulfill the mission. Stone and 2 more members of the company, Darius Wilcox and S.P. Lewis, would arrive on June 10, 1871. More than just a landmark, those twin cottonwood trees offered the only shade for miles around, and became a natural meeting room, if you will. It was there that a debate of great importance took place on June 19, 1871. What to name this new town? David Stone wanted to name it Aurora, in honor of his wife's hometown of Aurora, Illinois. Eventually, Stone convinced Robert Miller to vote with him, and so the deal was done. Aurora's town founders soon became town planners. They quickly established businesses and commerce and set in place the foundation for building up the town. Robert Miller was a carpenter and builder. David Stone managed his own grocery. Darius Wilcox dealt in grain and farm and agricultural implements. A young Nathan Thorpe practiced law, and the founders also became builders. In 1871, this would have become a very busy intersection here at 13th and M. Behind me would have been the very first dugout, Here on this empty lot, David Stone would have erected his very first wooden structure, and where Monette's is, Darius Wilcox would have put in his mercantile. Our lovely county courthouse would not yet have been built, as Aurora was not yet the county seat. The idea of relocating the county seat from Oroville City to another part of the county began on September 3, 1873. A petition was submitted to the county commissioners asking that the question of relocation be placed on the ballot at the next general election. The petition was granted and the question voted on in October 1873, with a majority voting in favor of relocation. It was also decided that at the next general election to be held in October of 1874, that voters would then designate upon their ballots the place of their choice for the county seat. Though Aurora won the election in 1874, 2 of the 3 county commissioners rejected the declaration. This began a lengthy process that involved articles of impeachment against county officials, accusations against the town of Hamilton for ballot box stuffing, and the filing of suit against David Stone and Darius Wilcox for removing the county records from Oroville City to Aurora. It came down to a 5th and final vote on October 12, 1875. Oroville City by now was out of the running, so voters would be asked to mark on their ballots if they would want Aurora or Hamilton to be the new location for the county seat. Aurora would win in this ballot by 81 votes. And at this point, the deed was done. It was a much anticipated day in October 1879 when the first steam engine chugged into Aurora. In the absence of fireworks, balls of cotton were soaked in turpentine and lit. Men marched around the square through the night, tossing these balls of fire into the air. The tracks were laid, carrying the hopes and dreams of its passengers. One such immigrant was A.G. Peterson, who arrived in the U.S. with just $14 in his pocket. He got a job working on the railroad until he saved up enough money to start his own business on Main Street. The building still remains here today, as does Aurora's legacy of welcoming immigrants.
My name is Chester Burt, and as editor of the Republican Register, I had the privilege of interviewing Frank Harris, one of the early pioneers, in 1935. Born to slave parents in Tennessee in 1863, Mr. Harris had an interesting life as a youth in the South before coming to this county at the age of 17. Determined to work out his destiny in this new land of promise, he bought a land seeker's ticket for $16.75. But Frank's mother could not consent to the parting and told her son that if he was going, so was the rest of the family. In 1884, he married Martha Wood. Mrs. Harris served as a caterer here for years, and Mr. Harris met with much success as a fruit grower, being the owner and founder of 2 orchards in the county. This couple had the esteem of the entire community.
For there I took the last farewell of my sweet
was a time of excitement and growth, new people coming to town, new businesses and ideas. But along with the growth and excitement came hardship. Farmers soon learned that virgin prairie would take some nurturing to grow bountiful crops to sustain a young family, God willing.
The bells of Aurora would begin to awaken the sleepy echoes of the town about 9:30 Sunday morning with their first call to Sunday school. The first clang of the initial bell would quickly be followed by the labor of the other ringers, whose watches needed a little forward adjustment. It might be the Free Will Baptist bell, then chiming at the corner of 12th and J Streets. Or it might be the Presbyterian bell, with Fred Hart at the controls. Or the Methodist chimer. One bell, I have concluded, is lovely, if it is sweetly toned. 2 are one too many, and 4, ringing in dissonance, are 3 too many for any community whose churches are engaged in a hand-to-hand conflict with the forces of Satan, and need all the outside help they can get. Clark Perkins and I stood together on the street one decoration day watching the blue line form. The leader of the band gave a silent signal. There was a roll of the drum. The drooping shoulders of the veterans suddenly went erect, and feet and hands flew to attention. The band swung into the strains of Onward Christian Soldiers, and the line moved forward, with the silk flag fluttering magnificently in the breeze. Clark started to say something to me, but his voice choked. In admiration, I saw a tear trickle down his cheek, and then I saw what he had seen. A brave line of stalwart men, who a short time ago were in their prime. Clark's father was one of the marchers, and I knew Clark saw him marching along.
Civil War veterans who, a little shell-shocked, sought a place to begin anew, without the sound of gunfire. A quiet place with ample land and water, granted through the Homestead Act. Their wives worked alongside them to prove up on the land. Some families later moved into Aurora, where they established businesses and worked to advance the life of the community.
I recall vividly one summer as I worked at my newspaper office. Through the open windows would float the murmuring voices of statesmen as they gathered under the box elders, discussing the deep intricacies of economics and government. Directly across the street east of the Tuttle House. Other times there were torchlight processions and daylight parades. Jammed halls and schoolhouses to hear political addresses. Debates and arguments on the streets. Those were the days.
Webster's dictionary defines politics as the art or science of government. But for Civil War General and Medal of Honor recipient Delavan Bates, it was a calling. After the New York native moved his family to Aurora, he served 8 terms on the city council and 2 terms as its mayor, helping orchestrate the incorporation of the city of Aurora. His wife, Lana Bates, was appointed by the governor to serve as secretary for the development of the sailor and soldiers' homes, as well as representing the state as an ambassador to the 1893 World's Fair in Chicago. The house they built still stands today.
In the days of derbies, stiff-bosomed shirts, bear grease hair pomade, and cardamom-scented breath, young chaps, searching for romance, elevated St. Valentine's Day into the altitude of a patriotic occasion. In the gay 90s, all that was required for a young man to attract a sweetheart was a well-trained, home-owned nag, or one of Jim Broadbent's livery teams for a picnic on the Blue, or for a holiday occasion. The accuracy and safety with which a team could get home, unaided by the driver, was positively miraculous. The town swimming hole, shaded by the old elm tree, was up in A.N. Thomas's pasture. From April 1st to cool September, youthful anglers pulled gigantic bullheads and astonishing sunfish out of its limpid waters. Often when the boys made for the banks and began to wonder how soon their hair would dry and what tails would be the most likely to go down with their mothers, they would find their clothes tied in knots. And then, from the freeze until the creek took on the nature of a raging river in the spring, it was a lovely outdoor skating pond. Saturday was exhibition day. The place would ring with shouts and laughter, and often, after nightfall, the scene would be lighted with the flames of bonfires, where the chilled boy and girl skaters gathered to rest and enjoy the warmth. The skating rink was a rambling, one-story affair, and what a racket ascended from the floor when it was filled with skaters. The steady whir of rollers, the shouts and screams of the skaters as they lost balance, the conversations in loud voices, all blended in a sound that made the neighborhood dizzy. The high and low, rich and poor, small and great met there on even terms and skated the evening away. The old rink was a social center, but it was announced one day that J.R. Van Boskirk bought it and would turn it into his farm implement dealership. As one of those who once donned skates myself, thoughts usher in a train of memories. Some glad, some sad, and all pointing to change, progress, and advancement.
Today, Aurora is truly the city beautiful. With its broad streets, splendid business blocks, beautiful homes, fine trees, and well-kept lawns. With a good system of waterworks and electric lights, prosperity beckoning to us on every side surely, we are more than contented. We are happy in this part of the land of the free and the home of the brave.
We are under lasting obligations to our pioneer men and women for the social, economic, and agricultural development that we now enjoy. While our generation has greater opportunities, we must also assume greater responsibilities that our pioneers may not have toiled in vain.
My fundamental belief about Aurora is that it's a good city, filled with good people who do great things.
I've had other communities ask me, how come Aurora's so lucky? There is just this huge spirit of cooperation here and a willingness to reinvest back into the community that I can't explain. It's just the people.
I wonder, have you thought about this priceless thing called the hometown spirit? The hometown spirit has no intrinsic value whatsoever. There's no measure with which it can be measured and no scales in which it can be weighed. But it's cheap enough that any village, town, or city may have it in abundance. It thrives best in the right environment. In towns and cities where all human rights and privileges are regarded, it flowers and multiplies and blesses all enfolded in its warm mantle. Because hometowns are precious things, they who rule them should make them places of happy childhood, wholesome influences, cultural advantages, and good living. They should strive unceasingly to surround every youth with the environment of cheer and encouragement. They should labor unceasingly and intelligently to make them such towns that boys and girls grown gray shall be able to say with glowing pride, "That is my hometown."
So many people have traveled through our story. So many lives have intersected in Aurora. What will the next 150 years look like? Will it be a reflection of the past 150 years, or will it be something entirely new? Sarah Miller did stay in Aurora for the rest of her life. She never looked any further. Along with the other founders and their families, she invested her heart into this town. They started with almost nothing, just some shade from 2 old cottonwood trees, and of course grit and determination. Certain it is that those of us who now enjoy the many opportunities and privileges of life here today can never even know how much we owe to those who came before us.